Fold, Spindle, and Mutilate Part 1. First off, you might wonder where this title comes from. Well, the original phrase was, "Do not fold, spindle, or mutilate," and was a standard printed card that accompanied all documents in offices where the documents might be damaged. They were used to protect documents from the obvious damage that would be inflicted on them if they were folded, spindled, or mutilated. In the digital age, with the paper-free offices, this is much less a concern. Now, I've chosen the phrase because in this assignment, what I want you to do as part of the exercise is precisely this. We're going to do quite a bit of chopping and moving of images. This is all for the benefit of taking on the next element in design, which is line. From this first image, you can see that weaving chopped media can result in some very interesting abstract images, and that is what we are going to be doing, refining and taking linear elements and turning them into abstractions. These first several examples are from actual physical samples of artwork. Your task will be to learn how to do this very same thing digitally, but first you have to create some mock-ups. The first task that you will be performing when creating a weaving is to select some material and to slice it horizontally. Then obtain another material and slice it vertically. Then combine them by weaving them together. These are some examples of watercolor paper artwork where various bands of colored material have been woven together. Some combine several different samples. Others are composed of many samples. What I'm going to be asking you to do first is to do a physical sketch or a mock-up. If you recall last week during our discussion on aesthetics, I hinted to you that not all sketches need to be done with pencil or pen. Some are what are called physical mock-ups, and this is just this example. I'm going to be taking you out to my garage studio here, and we're going to actually perform one of these. I will be performing one of these for you, so you can kind of get an idea about what I want you to do.
Okay, so as I told you previously, the thing that you're going to need for this particular one are some photographs from magazines or some such. This is only for the demonstration purposes of doing the composite sketch, if you will. In this particular case, it's a mock-up. And this particular case, I have these two images, which I'm going to show you here right now as scans so that you can see them a little more clearly. The important thing, of course, is that they be exactly the same size. Now I'm going to be starting and stopping this tape a couple of times so that you can see the various stages that I have to go through and you'll have to go through in order to do this kind of a thing. This is an example of where I'm going to show you this. It's the old I'll hum a few bars and you sing the symphony. You guys can figure out how to do other iterations of this, but I'm going to show you one here in particular. All right? So I'm going to stop this. Of course, the other thing you're going to need too, you're going to have some kind of a surface to work on. You're going to need to have a sacrificial surface. It doesn't have to necessarily be a cutting board. You can use a piece of chipboard, which is the stuff that comes off of the back of any pad of paper. You know, the gray cardboard, that will work fine. What you want to do though is you want to tape it down really well, and you want to make sure that you've got it at kind of like a 90-degree angle to whatever surface that you're working on. In this particular case, I'm using a T-square. The other thing that you can do, of course, is if you've got a long ruler or a giant 30-60 degree triangle like this, you can put that down like so, and then tape it down. Make sure that it's, parallel, perfectly parallel with one of the lines on the board, or if you could draw one line on the board first, then tape your triangle down. Because what you're going to do is you're going to be moving another triangle back and forth across that in order to make the cuts in your image. Okay? So I'm going to stop the tape at this point and we'll pick it up. So here we are again. Since we started up again, what I have done is I have taped both of the images down completely and totally directly one across the top from the other, and I have more or less kind of like sacrificed the edge of both of them all the way around by covering them up about 1/8 of an inch or so. Reason for this is because you want them to be secure while you're making whatever cuts that you're going to be making across them. If you were doing the one where you were doing the basket weave one, you would take and tape one image down and make your vertical cuts in it, and then tape the other one down and make your horizontal cuts in it. In this particular case, I'm doing the diagonal one, and so both of the images are going to have diagonals both cut in the same direction. You'll notice that I have also taped down my T-square because I don't want it moving up and down or jockeying around or anything like that. And you can probably also see, maybe you can't, but hopefully you can, that I have included marks along the bottom of the image by using my scale rule right here and placing it along the bottom, and I have marks at 1 inch across all the way along, and I've done it all the way out here because of course as you move across the image you want a mark over here to know where to make your cut. You can't make marks up the side because the geometry doesn't work that way. It won't, your cuts will end up narrower than they will if you are relying on the marks going the other way. I think that about takes care of it. The other thing that you're going to want to make sure that before you start that you have a pretty good sharp blade in your X-Acto knife, because you're going to be cutting through 2 images. There's a trick to using an X-Acto knife on anything, and that is to make sure, and you'll notice I'm lining up the 45-degree angle with the first line over here that corresponds to something. If I go to the very first one, of course, I'll be out here, and that's okay. I'll probably want that one. All you want to do, though, is cut from tape edge to tape edge, because when we're all done, we're going to cut the tape all the way out, and then both images will be separated from one another. But we won't do that till the very end. All right. So now the trick with using the X-Acto knife is that you make a light cut the first time, and then you go across and you make another one. That makes, if you do 2 on a magazine illustration like that, that's probably enough. If you're cutting board or something like that, you might want to make more cuts than that. You'll feel when you get through the images and you're into the sacrificial surface, because it'll feel different. So I'm going along, I'm lining my 45 up with each one of the lines that I previously made, and I'm making a diagonal cut across the images. And then we'll pause when I cut it out so that you can see what I am going to do next. Anyway, so I'm moving on across the image here and making diagonal cuts across, and it's going through both images simultaneously. So I'm ending up with one image that's being cut same place as the other image. Again, you guys may elect to do this with much narrower cuts. And again, these are for the purposes of creating mock-ups of the very thing that you will do eventually here in Photoshop. But what I want you to get the idea of doing is to do a couple of these in a couple different forms to get so that you have one that you like better than another, and are then able, much better able to make a decision about what you want to do, which is the whole idea behind doing a sketch in the first place. Now that I've made all of the cuts across, I'm going to cut all the way around the images. So what I'm doing now is I'm freeing them from the masking tape, which is holding them down around both edges. This gets a little tricky because some of these areas are going to now be free of the masking tape and able to move around. So you have to be really careful of where you're making your cuts. I just drifted off my line there. So because of that, I'm going to go over here a little bit further and make a cut so that I've got one straight cut that's not all marked up. Okay, now I've made the two vertical cuts across the image. Now I'm going to make the cut across the top and the bottom. Oop. That freed up that corner, which became kind of a mess. So now we're pretty well free of the top, and we're going to be pretty well free of the bottom, and now these things are all going to start moving around, as you can see. And here's where things get rather tricky, because it's kind of like a puzzle that you're going to have to put back together. You have to think about which pieces of the top image that you want to preserve and which ones of the bottom image that you're going to want to preserve. And of course, we can then make the images move back and forth across one another. And that's exactly the same thing that you're going to be doing in the digital version. So anyway, this gives you an idea of what I expect of you, what you will end up with ultimately, and I'll show this finally when I put this together in its final form. That's the way that I want you to present it to me, is to mount this down now to a piece of 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper in whatever form that you think that it looks best. So use some artistic license and put it together that way. So if perhaps you can see this, I'm going to move the camera just a moment. Now you can see I have the piece of paper here that I'm going to mount this stuff on, and surrounding the board here are the various strips. First the top, then the lower image, top, lower image, top, lower image, top, lower image. Each one of these corresponds to the other. So this is the top part of that slice, this is the bottom part of that same slice. And so what it'll allow me to do is to alternate back and forth between the top image and the bottom image and slide them back and forth across the paper. So when we pick this up again here in just a second, you'll see me doing that, and I will speed that process up so that you guys don't have to suffer through me doing the whole thing. But you'll get the idea about what it is that I want you to do. Okay? Okay, so I've given myself a baseline up here, a straight line across, and that's where I'm starting it. And I kind of want to start it over here as far as I can, because it's going to kind of work its way down, up and down across there. So this is the section from the top, which corresponds to this piece here from the piece underneath. So, you know, logically what you'd want to do is use the piece underneath next. And you're going to want to have another strip of paper here, because you're going to get glue from your glue stick all over the place otherwise, and you don't want that. So rather than line this one up exactly in line with that one, I'm going to bring this one up a little bit and jockey these up and down. Now I'm going to shut up and do the rest of this without talking so that I can speed this tape up so you can see the whole process start to finish. And there you have it. Ostensibly, you could take the remaining pieces, which I have all up here, and you've got another complete piece that you could do with that, which would be, you know, the mirror opposite, rather, of this one. Of course, the thing you're going to want to do when you're all done is you're going to want to crop this down so that it makes a little bit more sense, rather than being all pushed up into the left-hand corner of the image that you've got. But that's pretty much what it looks like. The difference, of course, being, now you have to untape it. The difference, of course, being that your version of this, when done in Photoshop, you'll be able to apply filters to it and make it a lot less recognizable than what it is. Anyway, I will do a scan of this and show it here at the end. This way you can see what it actually looks like when completed, with it cropped down to those lines that I specified and drew on the piece. Like I said, the things you're going to need for doing this, of course, are a glue stick, some masking tape, X-Acto knife, and a surface that you can work on where you don't have to worry so much about cutting. So anyway, that gives you an idea of how we do like mock-up sketches. This is different from drawn sketches. You can do ideas like this. You can figure out what you want to do in a sketch first, but it's always better in this particular instance, if you're going to put this final thing out as an image using actual photographs, how to put this together. You're actually going to slice up the images and do something with them. Okay? Anyway, all for now. I will see you guys in the next video.